Have you ever wondered why some drivers seem to get penalized for everything and others get away with it? What if I told you that one of the most influential world champions has just revealed evidence that could dismantle Formula One sanction system? The 2025 Brazilian Grand Prix, held at the legendary Interlagos circuit, began under an atmosphere of growing tension. The race had barely crossed its first turn when a seemingly minor collision between two drivers ignited a debate that would eventually escalate into one of the biggest scandals of the season. On lap 2, Lewis Hamilton, already with damage to his car as a result of a previous contact with Carlos Sainz, was trying to make up positions from the middle zone when he encountered the Alpine driven by Franco Colapinto. The maneuver occurred in one of the most technical areas of the track, turn 15, just before the long main straight. It was there that Hamilton, trying to take advantage of the slipstream after a mistake by Colapinto in the previous corner, was involved in lateral contact. The immediate result was significant damage to the front wing of the Ferrari SF25 driven by the Briton, the right end of which detached and became trapped under the chassis, causing severe aerodynamic problems that would accompany him for much of the race. Although the collision seemed minor from some exterior cameras, subsequent technical analysis showed that its consequences were much deeper than what was perceived in real time. But the true epicenter of this controversy is not only found in the maneuver or the material damage. What really sparked the debate was the steward's decision to sanction Hamilton with 5 seconds, marking him as fully responsible for the contact, while Colapinto did not receive any type of warning, formal investigation, or punishment. For many, this was just another sanction. But for Nico Rosberg, world champion in 2016 and today converted into one of the most influential analysts in the paddock, it was the last straw. Rosberg, who experienced firsthand what it means to be on the other side of Hamilton's garage during years of rivalry at Mercedes, did not hesitate to raise his voice. In his subsequent statements, he charged directly against the FIA, accusing it of acting under a double standard that is not supported by the regulations or competitive logic. In his words, these types of decisions reflect a chronic inconsistency in the application of sanctions that, instead of being based on objective criteria, seem to be contaminated by external factors. The name of the driver, his history, the media impact, or even the team he represents. The controversy grew even more when the first independent analyses of the incident began to emerge. Some experts in sports regulations showed comparisons with similar maneuvers from other seasons, in which it was decided not to sanction, or at least, to analyze in greater depth the intentionality and context of the movements. In this case, the FIA was surprisingly quick to issue its verdict, without apparent reviews of the full telemetry or onboard analysis of both cars. This context was key to fueling Rosberg's suspicions. For him, this was not simply a poorly judged racing action, but proof that the penalty system is not applied uniformly. His criticism was direct, informed, and especially significant coming from someone who, for years, suffered and witnessed the internal pressures, political fights, and favoritism within the world of Formula One. And so, what began as a technical penalty in a maneuver on lap 2 became a public complaint that has forced the FIA to be accountable not only to the teams and drivers, but to an increasingly informed, critical, and demanding fan base. To understand the seriousness of the incident between Hamilton and Colapinto and why it has generated such a forceful response from figures like Nico Rosberg, it is necessary to delve into its technical analysis. Formula One is not a sport that is governed only by visual perceptions. The most important decisions are based on accurate data. And in this case, the telemetry and team records reveal a very different story than what was written in the official FIA report. Everything happened at a critical point on the Interlagos circuit, turn 15. This is an area where the layout forces the drivers to precisely prepare the exit towards the long finish line, at a key moment to overtake or defend position. Hamilton, who had been coming back after a bad start and a previous contact with Carlos Sainz, took advantage of a mistake by Colapinto when he exited the previous corner a little slowly. Ferrari's SF25 gained better momentum and, with DRS not yet enabled, Hamilton opted to draw an outside line to take the lead. It is at this moment where one of the most controversial elements of the maneuver comes into play: Colapinto's change of trajectory. According to the Ferrari's telemetry, Hamilton had not only reduced the gap on the previous straight, but had also already chosen a clear trajectory towards the outside. However, at the exact moment in which the line change occurs, Colapinto's Alpine executes a correction to the same side, which generates contact between the right front wing of Hamilton's car and the Argentine's left rear tire. The surprising thing is that, while the FIA ruled that Hamilton was entirely at fault, arguing that the contact was slight and without immediate consequences for the rival car, the technical data demonstrates the opposite. According to Ferrari engineers leaked by Italian and British media, the damage suffered by the SF25 was not only aesthetic. The damaged front wing was trapped under the flat bottom of the car, directly affecting airflow and causing an estimated loss of between 35 and 40 points of downforce. At a circuit like Interlagos, that represents approximately half a second per lap, a huge loss in a competitive context. Furthermore, the internal damage report revealed that this alteration in the aerodynamic balance generated increasing instability that ended up forcing Hamilton to abandon on lap 37. That is, although the FIA tried to justify its decision with the supposed absence of immediate sporting consequences, the truth is that the consequences were not only sporting, but decisive for the outcome of the Brazilian GP and for Ferrari's aspirations in the championship. Added to this is Hamilton's subsequent statement, in which he explained that Colapinto's movement was unexpected and that, although he was in an attacking maneuver, he did not expect such an aggressive change of line. In an almost identical way, Colapinto told ESPN Argentina that he saw it in the rearview mirror, but that he didn't even notice the touch. This narrative coincidence between both pilots should have led, at a minimum, to a more in-depth review of the case by the stewards. But that never happened. The slow-motion analysis of the onboard replay reinforces this perception. Hamilton does not perform a sudden or invasive maneuver. On the contrary, its line is constant. What generates the contact is Colapinto's lateral slide that seems to close the space just when Hamilton was already committed to his line. Technically, this falls within what the regulations consider a shared risk situation, where both drivers have relative responsibility and the contact is considered a racing incident. However, the FIA chose to penalize unilaterally. And this is where Rosberg is crucial again. In his subsequent analysis on the German channel RTL, he denounced that the FIA completely ignored the telemetry data offered by Ferrari and did not request a review of the 360 onboard cameras. According to him, there was an unusual rush to close the case and apply a minimum penalty, as if they wanted to comply with a procedure rather than impart sports justice. Nico Rosberg's statement was not an emotional reaction to the Brazil incident. It was the result of weeks, even months, of meticulous observation of arbitration decisions that, in his opinion, follow a completely inconsistent logic. What Rosberg pointed out is not simply a one-time injustice against Lewis Hamilton, but a systematic pattern that runs through the entire FIA sanction structure. And that pattern, according to him, can no longer be ignored. The trigger was Brazil, but the fire had been brewing before. At the Mexican GP, just a week earlier, Hamilton was penalized 10 seconds for going off the track at turn 4. The official reason, having gained a lasting advantage after being forced out by Max Verstappen. But the controversy ignited because, in that same race, Verstappen executed a similar maneuver, cutting completely through the grass in turns 2 and 3, rejoining just in front of Hamilton, without returning the position and without receiving any sanction. The inconsistency was exposed to millions of viewers, but the FIA remained silent. Rosberg, who is no stranger to the political dynamics within the paddock, was direct. When the name in question is Hamilton, tolerance is reduced, the benefit of the doubt disappears, and stewards tend to apply sanctions more severely. This perception, although dangerous, is not unfounded. He backed up his claim with a detailed comparison of official stewards' documents from different races, showing how similar actions received radically different treatments depending on the driver involved. Rosberg's analysis was not limited to just Hamilton. He also cited cases involving other drivers such as Oscar Piastri, who received only a reprimand for an aggressive defensive maneuver against George Russell in Japan, despite having crossed the white track boundary on 2 occasions to defend his position. Why then, in other situations, are drivers penalized for barely touching a line? Why are some mistakes considered incidental, while others deserve immediate and severe punishment? In his own words, Rosberg defined it as a structural double standard that deeply damages the integrity of the sport. And this is a key point. Because beyond the rivalry between drivers, what is at stake here is the credibility of Formula One as a fair competition, where each driver should be judged equally, regardless of their nationality, history, or media impact. Added to this is another problem that Rosberg did not overlook: the lack of transparency in the decision-making process. Currently, commissioners are not required to publish all the evidence they review, nor the internal deliberations that lead them to issue their sanctions. This creates an opaque wall where decisions that affect points, championship positions, and even reputations are made, without clear accountability to the public. Rosberg proposes establishing a mandatory protocol for public review of telemetry, onboard cameras and subsequent interviews in cases that involve physical contact between cars, as occurs in other sports with the use of VAR or instant review. For Rosberg, this situation has already crossed a point of no return. According to him, if the FIA does not take concrete measures to standardize its penalty criteria, regaining the public's trust will be impossible. And when a sport loses the trust of its spectators, it doesn't matter how spectacular its technology is or how many millions it invests in promotion. Credibility is irrecoverable. Nico Rosberg did not only denounce an unfair sanction against Lewis Hamilton. What it revealed was a system that seems to operate with different logic for different pilots. A system that, in his words, no longer responds to sporting criteria, but to external influences, favoritism, and media pressure. And this should worry all of us who follow this sport with passion. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.